culture, and creativity. They define our past, our present, and our future. Our most memorable moments are made with you. Your ingenuity informs, inspires, and unites us. Your work moves us forward, so we work to keep you creating. At Avid, we champion the art of song and the skills of storytelling, driven by imagination, productivity, and reliability. Realizing technology unites individuals and empowers collaboration, fostering community where thousands of creators connect and share. Inspiring students, educators, and artists to thrive. The challenges we face, we solve together. Avid has your back, innovating so you can reach new heights. Whether you are one or many, we only have one goal: to maximize your creative process. Every minute, every day, we are powering greater creators.
Hi, I'm Josh Apter, founder of Manhattan Edit Workshop, and welcome to episode 30. Have we done 30 of these already? My God. All right, wow. Sight, Sound, and Story Live, episode 30, Behind the Edit, editing the TV series. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into the creative process that shapes the narrative and visual rhythm of your favorite TV shows, and how the editing landscape evolves alongside streaming platforms, binge-watching culture, and the demand for dynamic storytelling. We have an amazing panel with Kelley Dixon, ACE, Shannon Baker Davis, ACE, and Bradinn French, ACE. Our moderator tonight is producer and nonprofit arts leader, Sean Weiner. We'd like to thank our sponsors, AJA, ACE, Zeiss, Avid, and Filmmaker U. And I want to personally thank Jason Banke, the tech wizard behind all of these 30 episodes, and Janet Dalton. You make my job easier than it ought to be, for sure. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Thanks so much, Josh. Welcome to Sight, Sound, and Story. Welcome to this conversation around editing the TV series. We're so glad to have you all watching. We're so glad to have our guests, who I'll read their bios of momentarily, and that'll give a nice, thorough introduction to everybody who's here and all the expertise in the room. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Sean Weiner. I'm the co-director of UFO, which is called Untitled Filmmaker Organization, which is a filmmaker support program that helps create a collaborative and kind of inclusive pathway for filmmakers and different folks in the film industry getting into the careers like those of our guests. And I'm thrilled to be here with Shannon Baker Davis, who is an award-winning television and film editor. After 10 years editing unscripted series like iconic shows Project Runway and Top Chef, Shannon jumped to scripted television and features. She has edited projects such as Grownish, Queen Sugar, The Photograph, The Obituary of Tunde Johnson, hashtag Black as Fuck, and Impeachment, American Crime Story. Her latest projects include Kindred on FX and Hulu, From Scratch on Netflix, and she's currently editing a Marvel series on Disney+. Shannon is also an emerging writer-producer, having written web series Colored People, pilots Al Kabulan, and features, all of which have earned laurels at various festivals and screenwriting competitions. Shannon was recently inducted into the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences, becoming only the fourth Black woman to be inducted into the editor's branch. She is a member of ACE, where she is a mentor in their diversity mentorship program. Shannon is a board member of the Motion Pictures Editors Guild, where she is also a founding member of the African American Steering Committee, the Editors Peer Group of Television Academy, and the Avid Customer Association. Shannon grew up in Augusta, Georgia, earned degrees from Howard University and the American Film Institute, and resides in Los Angeles, California, with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
Kelley Dixon grew up with a single mom who taught grade school on Chicago's South Side. After graduating from Colorado State University with a degree in journalism, Kelley's sights were set on a writing career in advertising. So it was head west. to Los Angeles and no openings in any of the ad firms of her dreams. So instead, Kelley landed a job in MGM's mailroom and there started a career in the film biz without going to film school. 30-something to Good Will Hunting to Breaking Bad, with many jobs in between on the ladder from production assistant to editor. Kelley has been editing Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Walking Dead, Preacher, HBO's Luck, and Shameless, among others. She cut her first feature, The Goldfinch, in 2018. Spent the pandemic year editing Marvel's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and most recently cut Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Marvel's Wakanda Forever. She has won 1 Emmy for Breaking Bad and has received 9 Emmy nominations and 8 ACE nominations for her work. Kelley is a trumpet and piano player, a Lego enthusiast, and loves biking with her black lab, Eli, who we just met. Welcome, Kelley. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Bradinn French is an Emmy Award-winning picture editor with credits ranging in television and features, from scripted drama to sketch comedy to documentary and reality. Recent projects include a Black Lady sketch show on HBO, which won both an Emmy Award and an ACE Eddie Award for the 2022 season. He has also worked on American Horror Story on FX, Tribeca Audience Award-winning feature documentary Ferguson Rises, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion show on HBO Max, and is currently in post on Hulu's limited series Washington Black. French is a strong advocate for representation in the film industry and believes in mentorship and guidance for new filmmakers entering the industry from diverse backgrounds. Bradinn resides in Los Angeles with his wife, screenwriter Nicole French, and their two children. Is it still 2 children? We've just heard of a new. Okay, that's the 2. We're at
Currently
2.
2 children. We're at 2.
Recently at 2. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think the conversation today, we'll talk a little bit about just where TV's at. I think it's in a really interesting place. I think there's a lot to unpack there. Also, I feel like we're kind of at an interesting inflection point, though I think TV's always been in evolution, certainly throughout my lifetime, but certainly things are changing massively with streaming. And then we have a selection of clips that the editors here chose out. So we'll kind of look at different clips and talk a little bit about what's going on within those scenes, and then end in a space of kind of looking forward and thinking about kind of what if we're looking into the crystal ball, what sort of lies ahead, and also kind of recognizing that a lot of the people who watch these recordings are folks who are aspiring towards these careers or looking to get into these career pathways. So we'll sort of think specifically about what advice, what tricks of the trade we might have to share to end off. So with that, I think I'd like to just start in that space of just thinking about how you even think about TV. Do you think about TV as in any way sort of separate from features at this point, or because everything's kind of coexisting in a space that is, largely streaming, unless you're going to a theater ahead of time? Does it feel like TV and sort of features have started to kind of just overlap and converge? And then I'll sort of ask some follow-up questions around specifically kind of, how that impacts you as editors. So I'll put out that big philosophical question to start, see who bites, and we'll go from there.
I don't think that they're converging quite yet. I think that the way that we view them, in the venues that we view them, mostly in our living room on giant screens, although if you're, maybe the Gen X age. So I feel like the philosophies and the ideologies, especially how they are handled in prep, production, and post, have not converged quite yet. I think that things are moving toward the streaming model because that's the end result, that it most likely is not going to end up at the big theater. It's most likely going to end up, in some sort of streaming platform. But I think that the way that the artists think about them is still very much feature versus streaming. On the streaming side, though, I think that everything is in flux and nothing is, normal, and nothing is like it used to be. I don't know, pre-pandemic, but it was really on its way. The train had left the station maybe like 2013, 2014, I think, something like that. Once the streaming platforms really started to come into their own and they were doing their own original programming, and a lot of times they were getting they were starting to be more director based, or at least publicity director based, meaning we have this really big director doing all these episodes. The model started to change. That's my thought. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think that like when companies started out doing features and now they're in streaming, they do tend to run it more like a feature, like a 6-hour feature cut into 1-hour blocks, where anything can go anywhere over the course of the series. But if a company has always done episodic television, they still run it the way an episodic show has always been run. And I personally prefer the collaborative 6-hour feature model as opposed to the episodic one, because you feel isolated when you're on that kind of show where you're like, oh, I don't even know what's going on with episodes 1 through 5, and I'm 6 and in the middle, and even on a first season, even on especially a second or third or fourth season, you feel like you are, doing what's already been done, obviously, putting a little bit of your personal touch to it, but it does feel like, oh, well, why'd they change that story element in episode 2? And that affects me. And, oh, is anybody going to say anything? And, so I like where streaming television is going. I personally, I prefer it. I like cutting features and I like cutting pilots. And so, it's a little less job security on that side, because you're like, oh, I'm probably not going to be doing 6 seasons of Law and Order. But, that's just, for me, that's what I prefer.
Do you feel like in that kind of 6-hour feature model, you feel more in a collective and in collaboration with that full group of people? So there's more continuity and sort of understanding the overall arc, and where like, oh, I'm filling in this puzzle piece, but in a way that feels very informed by every other creator.
When it's working well, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What, Kelley? No, I mean, you do feel, and it's also,
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you because I know what you're insinuating.
It's also the personality of the editor too, because my personality is to like big picture and dig in and ask the questions and basically be all up in everybody's business. But some people's personality is not that. They prefer to only handle what they are doing and do that really, really well, but not like venture into other areas of the series. So it's it's different people, different
Yeah,
ways
and
of working.
here's the kicker for that too. It's not just the editor personality, it's everybody's personality. Personal psychology that everyone brings to the job, it all of it becomes what is in the middle of the room, all of it. And people's insecurities, people's introverted, people are extroverted, people, so I mean, I'm certainly not arguing anything that Shannon is saying. I'm saying that, yeah, it's all in flux, and it didn't used to be. Um, it
Mhm.
it is really in flux now, and you know, I think that the latest motto is sort of like be flexible and happy. If instead of probably saying what the hell, I'm not supposed to do this isn't the way it's supposed to happen, my thought is come on in, how you doing, nice to meet you, let's work, because it's it I used to feel like this is not the way it's supposed to be, and this is totally not the rules, and it's like the rules have changed,
Right.
And it's just whoever's driving your show.
It's interesting, right? It's a big time of transition. And I think, gosh, in a weird metaphorical way, it's like there's all this talk about being present in like meditative language and all these things. And in a weird way, that's kind of what we're forced to be when things are changing. And so what you're suggesting is like, all you can do is be happy and flexible. It's almost like, let me just worry about today and right now, because things are moving and changing and we can't resist that change entirely. And it doesn't feel like it's landed, though I do also wonder if it'll also kind of perpetually be changing. I mean, it's like the technology will continue to advance. So will we ever arrive at a next station, or are we just kind of like on the train? Not to be cryptic or whatever. But Bradinn,
I think somebody's going to win at some point. I think that one faction is going to win, meaning directors versus writers. As being in control. I have a feeling somebody's going to win, but I have a feeling it's also going to be the venue, meaning whoever's paying the bill is the one that's going to drive that. The writers are really necessary because they're hopefully the good ones are very well versed in managing the ins and outs and of story that needs to happen to keep us interested in 6 hours. So, my personal feeling is the ones the projects that tend to work, I feel like the best are the ones where directors and writers have a very symbiotic relationship and they understand each person's worth and they work well together.
Yeah. I mean, it's a team sport, right? And I think that's, and it's not to reduce or minimize anybody's contribution, but I think we know that this thing just works best when everybody's able to kind of support. And it's a little idealistic to say, but to see everybody's talents kind of resonate as loudly as possible. And I think, that's exactly what you're pointing out at the end there, Kelley. Bradinn, I want to make room for you to talk a little bit about, kind of the state of things right now. And
I think, with my background is mostly episodic television. The feature work I've done has been documentary, or in the scripted world, it's been indie. So I think, Kelley and Shannon, I would actually be curious what you guys think, because for me, I'm thinking during this conversation, even just the political structure of the features I've done has been different. Like vastly different from television, just kind of in the hierarchy of who you're working with and collaborating with and who's creatively passing down notes, where I guess the features I've done have felt more like one-on-one work with the director. And you'll get notes from the studio, you'll get notes from people above that, but it's kind of a creative work with the creative visionary. Whereas my TV work has been, it's gone through several tiers of people, people who are both creative and people who are corporate. And for me, I guess what I wonder is that your experience on your wide release stuff for Kelley and Shannon, because I imagine that's how indies go, but a studio release feature, I'm sure, has a more corporate structure, and I guess I would wonder if that would bleed into it the same way it does for television.
I mean, I feel like what you said is how it definitely there are more people involved, more money involved. But when you're in the room, you're in with your director as an editor. You're there with the director. You basically, that to me, I feel sometimes at the end, the editor is the department head of editorial and literally pushing the thing to the finish line. So, and then when you're in television, it's completely different. There's a whole team of people that are pushing it to the finish line. And sometimes you're not even involved in some of the finishing and, the mix. And also that's why I prefer the feature model, because maybe it's the controlling part of me, like, like something that you feel like you've worked really, really hard on for many, many months, that you want to see it through to the end. And but it's, the same as indies. Maybe Kelley has a different experience because her movie was way bigger with a lot more people involved, but I would hope that it would still be the same.
No, I think that in features, it has remained very traditional in the way that it, in the role delineation, I like to say that in features, the director and the editor are close as a couple of fingers. They're partners, especially in the finishing. And in television, it used to be that editors were kind of, a cog in the wheel, and, the whole thing was pretty much at Picture Lock taken over by a post producer. But as feature people have started to get into streaming or TV, they don't realize that that's the role that they're supposed to take. So, TV editors are like, I'm done, I'm out, I'm done. and post producers are like, hey, what are you talking about? You have to do this, this, and this. What are you talking about? And so that there has been, I think, in the last couple of years, a little bit of a disconnect, but there also has been a much more blurring of the responsibilities, because, it's almost like, it's a new school. So, let's go eat over here. We don't have to eat in the cafeteria. We can go eat in the lounge or in the this or in the, it's like, and so I think that's how they're treating it. And, directors are coming into streaming, realizing that they can have much more control with, and also do, very big 8-hour, series or whatever. And they're like, oh, why should I change? I'm gonna do it my way, the way I work, So, like I said, it's, I think anybody like starting out, anybody who's watching this and they're probably starting out, it's gonna feel like, oh, this is normal, but I think for me and, probably Shannon, I don't know, Bradinn, this is, you're kind of newer into the streaming, like scripted streaming. It's a little bit, like a little bit of a, hey, this is not how it's supposed to work. I'm used to planning, my workload, my day, my, my, how I function on this in one way. And this is, I'm gonna have to change up because, and what can be frustrating also is that a lot of times, the people above you don't know either. I think that's the part that's very disconcerting in all of this, because you feel like, you need a strong, it's good to have a strong leader, and, you might not have a strong leader. There's a lot of really great emerging writers, let's say, for streaming, and it's still, sort of the writer showrunner idea. There's a lot of emerging writers, but they're also becoming showrunners, and they've never done that before. And no offense to any of them, but a lot of times they don't really have a lot of they have not been well versed in all the departments. They've been in the writer's room and they understand the writer's room, but there's a lot more that's going to happen outside the writer's room. And I'm not talking just post, it's, production and all that stuff. And so, I've just seen and I've heard stories of, people who, just kind of, become deer in headlights. They don't know how to handle that huge responsibility. It's hard. It's not easy. I know that when I was working on Breaking Bad, I had a new showrunner, Vince Gilligan, but he learned a lot while he was working on X-Files from Chris Carter. So he became, a fantastic showrunner, but because he spent so much time in the editing rooms doing producers cuts, we learned along with him. We started to, learn about all the responsibilities and all of the politics and all of the, dealings with, all the departments and studios and all that kind of stuff, just because he was in our rooms for 10 hours a day, or, at least 8. And so I'm trying not to go on and on about this, but basically it's like, I get this question a lot, how are things changing? And I'm like, I don't know where it's going to end up, but it's very, very different than it used to be. And I guess for, the people that have been in it for at least 10 years, be flexible and happy. For the people that are coming in, the first show you do may be very, very different than the next show you do.
Yeah. It's also that schedules affect those too. Like, so the traditional TV model, you couldn't usher it through to, the delivery of it because you had to start your next episode. So, your dailies were coming in on episode 6 while you're in director's cut or producer's cut sometimes with, a previous episode. So all of that thing, and that also comes from seasons, when seasons were 22 episodes long and they had to just keep churning it through. And so there wasn't a lot of I guess people didn't take creative chances because they didn't have time to. Right. So, and now that I wouldn't say the schedules are getting longer, but I think the responsibilities are becoming bigger. And so that's kind of a push and pull too, is that it's like, oh, well, you have this heavy VFX show now. We cannot do the traditional half-hour sitcom model because it just won't work. So yeah, that's a lot of, and then, like Kelley said, people recognizing that, the way you did things 5 years ago even is not going to be the same that you do it on this particular show. And so being flexible is great. And also I think, I feel it's part of my job to always be thinking about ways to innovate, always think story-wise, we haven't talked yet about the craft, story-wise and being efficient in the telling of the story and seeing things that are going to be an issue down the line and, trying to figure out the timing of, well, when do I drop this suggestion on them? It's all very, very complicated what we do. And I think people don't understand that because what they see is edited together and it seems like, oh, it's naturally supposed to be that way. Mm-hmm. It was not that way when you started, you had to discover that. And a lot of that is the editor's job. Mm-hmm. And if the editor is not contributing to the discovery of the innovative ways to cut it, the ways to put together the story, the ways to shape a person's character, performance, then, that's not the type of editor that I am. So, like I said, I'm all up in everybody's business. And then by everybody, I mean the project.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just interesting to think about there's a new model, or there's a need for building new models. It seems like what a lot of what you're calling out are these needs for, how do you manage something new? And how, like, those who are maybe leading something might not know what the thing totally is yet because the fog is still clearing. And how do you build systems where it's like, oh, well, what is that job now? What is a showrunner now? How do you kind of check in on everything now? And how can you maybe build systems where it allows people to have those skills and understand what it is that we're handling? The other thing that I'm hearing is I'm sorry, go ahead.
All I was going to say is, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but I found that one of the culprits is the post-producer, because a lot of the post-producers have done the job, meaning post-producer handles, all of post-production. They're pretty much the department head of streaming, and television, episodic things, for all of post-production, meaning they're the ones that get all those pieces together, and then they handle VFX, ADR, all the things that finish in the mix. And they spearhead all of that stuff. But a lot of the post-producers have been doing it for years and years. And the model that they're used to is what Shannon said, the old episodic, network episodic 22 episode kind of thing. So they come to these showrunners with a schedule and say, okay, here's what you have to do. Well, the new showrunners will be like, okay, just tell me where to be, right? But these post-producers, and again, no offense to them, but they're not artistic necessarily people. Some of them are. Some of the best ones I know are. But a lot of them are not artistic. And a lot of new showrunners don't have the clout to say, no, I'm not doing that. This is what I'm doing. You figure out the schedule and make what I want work. I think that's what, in a lot of ways, what directors from the feature side who are coming in are saying, nah, I don't work like that. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, in a lot of ways, that's where this flux is coming from, because they're having to change these schedules because the artists are like, no, I want more time. Mm-hmm. Like I said on Breaking Bad, was probably one of the first, if not the first, to basically say, we don't want to do producers' cuts during production, which is not the model that was back then. Breaking Bad started in 2007. So the model back then was, we're going to do editors' cuts, then we're going to do directors' cuts, then the producers are going to come in and do producers' cuts. Then guess what? We're going to do editors' cuts. We didn't do that. We did editors' cut, director's cut. Then we went back to editor's cut, and all of those shows sat on the shelf until after production. And then our producers, Vince Gilligan, his writing staff, came in and did all the producers' cuts in a row. 13 weeks of producers' cuts. That was unheard of.
That's so smart. That is so smart.
And expensive. And it's expensive, right? Unheard of. This is not the model that, television had since the 80s, probably, I guess. I don't, but this model of turning out television had been going for a long time. Post-producers are like, okay, this is the schedule. This is how it's supposed to work. Shannon, you're going to do episode 1. You're going to do dailies from day 1 to day 8. And then on day 10, you're going to give us an editor's cut. And then on day 11, you're going to work with the director for 4 days. And then you're going to start, editing episode 3 or whatever, right? That was the model. And it was very, very rigid. And then basically at the showrunner, they would tell the showrunner, okay, you have to come in and do a producer's cut at 3 o'clock on this day. You have from 3 to 7. That's it. Right? Mm-hmm. Artists started to say, no, I need more time. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of where it came from. And again, I know post-producers, I know some great post-producers, but I know a lot of them are going to be like, not everyone to hire me, but here's the thing. And I have to, remind my, especially assistant editors about this. The trajectory of that job is post-production assistant, post-production coordinator, post-production supervisor, post-producer. And that happens a lot faster than, let's say, well, it used to be the editing. Nowadays, you can be an editor fairly quickly. But, I kind of remind my friends a lot of times, hey, that post-production supervisor, they were PA 2 years ago or something, right? And so, they're just basically taking a schedule. It's not like a lot of them have had the background, the experience, the working with their producers and understanding the artistic part of it, because honestly, that job is more, it's not an artist job as much as like our job is. And so they're used to this schedule that they've just inherited. And they can go to a new showrunner, and there's a lot of new showrunners who don't know and don't have the clout to say, I need more time, or I want more time, or no, I won't do that.
Or are so busy they can't even wrap their heads around post.
Yeah.
They're in prep.
Yeah. And
like,
that's
what?
And
and they're like this. They have too much going on. People asking them a million questions a day, and they're like, sure. If somebody's going to take over that part of the job, do it. And then, in a lot of ways too, the post producer, again, no offense to them, because they're being leaned on by the studio. The studio, that's their boss. The studio's like, we need this, and you need to to make that showrunner do that. You need to hit these schedules. So I think that in a lot of ways, that's where it's coming from. I think from the artistic side, meaning the writers, the directors, and all the rest of us artists, yes, we need time to make this art that, everybody wants us to do the best job on. But the traffic managers are like, we have a deadline. We have to hit this, then this, and this. And the only way we're going to hit it is this. And that's where it's sort of coming from. I think that's where the flux is coming from. And that's where, I don't know, I never thought about it this way, but I think that's where the flexing is coming from too. Where these people are saying, happen. You got to, if you got to figure out a way to give me the time I need.
I've totally run into that, Kelley. It's like, I mean, I'm sure we all have.
But popular after this, I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's.
Well, it's do better. That's what we're saying. Do better. It's not. We're not like, yeah. Go ahead, Bradinn.
No, that rigidity in the schedules, it doesn't necessarily collaborate well with, I think, especially with newer showrunners who or creative talent in any portion who can't necessarily like Shannon said, it's not like the 22 like episodic television, some of these limited series where especially the VFX heavy ones, like I think we've all been working on, where it takes much longer to do a lot of the creative work on these scenes or on these shows. And it doesn't necessarily correspond with a rigid, old traditional schedule like a post producer might set or like a studio might expect. And it certainly creates a ballooning set of problems, because once you start bumping up against 1 week's schedule, you end up it has a tremendous domino effect, and I've definitely seen it firsthand. So I think you're right on, Kelley.
It's so interesting because it's like you're seeing sort of old model meets new model. You're seeing an acceleration happening, which is accelerating both in terms of the amount of stuff, but also, Kelley, to your point, like the acceleration of people's careers. So there's like they're moving to new positions faster, which means that they're not able to absorb more and more experience. So that puts, so it's like all of these things create levels of can kind of gum up the system, right? And it's, where will it settle? We'll see. But it's sort of interesting how all those factors are kind of creating different reasons why those dominoes kind of fall, Bradinn. I want to switch us real quickly to thinking about how you approach what you want to edit on. And I don't, I say that without like a depth of understanding of like the agency one has. Obviously there's also a work-life balance thing here where it's like, well, I need to gig and I want to be working consistently, and it also sounds like some of that's being over invaded where like there's maybe longer hours, or we're doing these more artistic projects, which means you're working more, but if you're as folks who are kind of well into your careers, how do you think about the next project, your own careers, what you want to work on, your growth, what you're interested in? How do you look at what's next and sort of make decisions on what to take on?
I've been having a lot of conversations about this, with my wife, given we just had a baby, and not everybody's going to be in this situation, but it adds an interesting dynamic that's almost more logistical than it is, what do I desire to work on? What genre do I want to be in? Who do I want to work with? There's a whole component about, can I work from home? Can I have like expectations about hours with who I work with? Are they good? If I need to not work a weekend, if I need to go home at 6, if I need to, have time set aside to go to doctor's appointments, is this the type of job that's going to give me that flexibility? And if it's not, there's some weighing that has to happen. Is this something that I'm willing to make certain personal sacrifices for, or, is this the type of job that's not worth that? And so I think for me, especially, I had our first son in 2021. I started having to look at jobs that way, and even people without. I think that's a concern for people with kids, but even people without kids. I think especially now in a COVID and post-COVID world, there's this extra element of remote work. And do you want to work from home? Do you want to work in an office? I think people have different preferences there. I've had friends that moved to Texas too, or they moved back home because they could do the remote work there. And then it's kind of cemented in what kind of job you could choose. But, beyond that, beyond the logistics stuff, I think at this, so like Kelley was saying, I'm early in my career, having jumped over into, scripted streamers. So the math for me is a little more about what I can access that I think will expand, not just my resume, but expand my experiences with people who know what they're doing, and people I can learn from, but also things that I try to work on things I'd be interested in watching, which when I started my career, I started my career in reality. I rarely ever watched any of those shows that I worked on. And so jumping into scripted, it's a bit of a different, there's a different math for me where it's not just, I think in reality, it's like, how many credits can you acquire quickly? And, for me in scripted, it's the quality of the material, and it's how am I going to feel working through this stuff every day, and how am I going to feel working with the showrunners I'm working with, and if I have any knowledge of the team I'm going to be working with, it's like, am I working with other editors that I like, that I want to be around? But it depends on the type of show. Like a show I did, like a Black Lady sketch show. All the editors are very close knit, and we rely on each other for feedback. We trust each other, and that's the type of team where you have to be, you have to function as a unit through the entire production. There's other productions I've worked on where, you hardly interact with the other editors. It might be a better thing if you do, but you can each be in your own episodic world and not have much interaction, and the show will still go on. So it kind of depends on the dynamic of the show for me, and what I want to get out of it and what I think I can contribute to it.
Yeah. I mean, I joke that, I do what my agent tells me to do, but my agent is like at this point in my career too, because I still feel like I'm early on because I'm still trying to like get that perfect show, like there's been a lot of great experiences, but I still feel like I need to like work consistently to support my family, but then also try to find the perfect mix. And it's very elusive. You never know when you start a show if it's going to be perfect and great and win all the awards. You never know. Like you can say, and my agent tells me that all the time, you can look at all the ingredients, but then it could taste terrible by the end that you put all the things together. So you never know. So what I'm trying to choose by now is my connection to the material. And do I feel like my particular experience will contribute in a way that is valuable to the production? And I don't mean valuable while we're working on it. I mean valuable when it's out in the world. As a Black woman saying, you know what, this might be problematic, speaking up about things like that, because that voice may not be in the room at all. And so that's what my agent tells me all the time, you can't edit everything, Shannon, but I do feel like a responsibility too, to protect images and, protect the filmmaker. Like they might not even know what they don't know about what their words are saying and how they're coming off, and what's offensive and what's not offensive, and how their character is being absorbed by the world. So that's what I try to hang on to as the you weigh all the other things, but then it's like, do I feel connected to the material?
I feel like I'm still curating a career, although friends are like, what, but I do. I really do. I mean, I still feel like I haven't hit where I want to hit. So I'm still very much, looking at.
You want 10 nominations. 20. 15 Emmys.
What I'm trying, what I'm basically, when I first got an agent, actually, I was in my first season of Better Call Saul. So I had done the whole Breaking Bad, and I felt like I wasn't getting, like other friends of mine who were new editors were getting phone calls that I wasn't getting. And I was like, a little shocked, a little indignant. And then like, what the hell? Why am I not getting that phone call? But, this person, that, and no offense to them, but they were getting these calls. And so I figured at that point I needed an agent. Now my sort of philosophy around agents, and I love my agent, but my philosophy around agents is, and I kind of, advise friends who ask is like, look, are you looking to widen your circle of influence? If you're looking to get into something else, then you probably need one. If you are fine in the circle that you're moving in, you like the producers, or you like the jobs that are coming your way, or they work for your lifestyle, then you probably don't want to, it's expensive. You don't want to spend the money. But I do know that my salary jump has been, there's no way that I would have had the salary jumps that I had if I didn't have my agent. And frankly, I would never even know how to negotiate, the way that they do. So So to me, it's worth the money. But I also told my agent when I first started with him, was like, and this was when they were basically kind of advising me to, break off from TV and start into the feature world. The one thing they said to me was, they said, when we talk to feature people about you, they get very excited, so they said it was, I don't know if it still is, but it was a little harder to make that crossover from, episodic drama to features. And so they advised me to do that. And but I told them, I said, listen, I am not interested. If I'm interested more in a good script than I am in a good paycheck. Doesn't mean that I don't need money, but it did mean that I was like, look, if you've got a horror movie that's kind of crappy, but it's going to pay a couple thousand more, I'm more interested in the drama that's going to pay, around scale. And so they really, were looking for projects like that for me. And, I'm really, really happy. These guys probably know I say this a lot, is all roads lead to here. And I'm very happy with where here is. So I think that I've done pretty well. I don't like to think that the best, job that I ever had was my first job, but it was a freaking great job. Breaking Bad was, it was a great experience. It was great writing. It was a great team. I was, well thought of. They allowed me to do a lot of experimentation and get good at it. They appreciated what I was doing. So I had a great experience, and I'm hoping that wasn't the best experience, that, I'm hoping that's not it. But another friend said to me a couple of years ago, he's a feature editor. And he said, look, Kel, he's Australian. So he's like, look, Kel, but he said, look, pretty much any job that we decide to take is going to take about a year. And so you have to think about how many of those do you have, and do you want to squander, that year on something that you don't particularly want? I mean, what is the purpose of the job? And, I'm not passing judgment. Look, it could be money. It could be experience. It could be working with somebody, but I think at the end of the day, for me, I always want to be fairly proud of what I've put out there in the world. And so, my agent, he's really nice. And he says that it doesn't affect him, or he's not bothered by it. But I always feel bad when I have to tell him, no, I don't like this. Or, I'm fairly hard on scripts. I read them, and I'm a slow reader of scripts, mostly because I'm trying to visualize what they're showing me and how it's going to look, and what, my role is going to be in this. But I'm pretty hard on scripts. And a lot of times I'll be like, no, this is too cliche, or no, if, this is really boring, or no, and sometimes I've been, I've looked at who's involved in it, and I'm like, that sounds amazing on paper, but in reality, it's probably a political nightmare. Do I have the stamina? Do I want to get involved in something like this? And so, yeah, I feel like so far, I feel like I've done a pretty good job. I think my resume is in very, very good shape. And the hard part too is to maintain your reputation in town. You don't want to be, one of these people that, is a screamer, or this argumentative, or it's not a team player, or all these things. You're constantly having to perform. You're having to perform, to your artistic ability, but you're also having to be like, oh yeah, we like Kelley. She's cool. She's fun to work with. Because I'm sure all of us have run across those people who are like, yeah, I heard that person is like, she's always mad, or you know what I mean? And you don't want that, because I feel, my personal feeling is that really follows you. You know, a lot of times there's rumors out there, but rumors tend to have some degree of, you know, truth. And the last thing that I want is to have like a bad mark on, you know, me. And so, you know, what I like to hear is, you know, oh, you know, we hear that you're so good with drama and we love, you know, the work that you do and stuff like that. So I feel like, you know, I don't think that I have too many dogs in the closet. You know, I think that I'm doing fairly well, but on the other hand, it makes it so, you know, I have to be fairly discerning on what the next project is. I got asked yesterday, I was meeting with the director, just for fun. It wasn't a job. It was just, you know, to meet with somebody. And he asked me, you know, would you work for Marvel again? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I liked, you know, working there. I think it would depend on the team that I was working on the picture and on the team that I was working with. But here's the thing. The first thing in my mind is not about, you know, Marvel as an entity. The first thing in my mind is, I just did Falcon, Star Wars, Wakanda Forever. If I do another Marvel picture right now, I'll never get called for a drama again. So those are the things that I'm more thinking of. It's not about, you know, not, you know, wanting to be with an entity. I had a great experience, you know, a couple great experiences with Marvel, very educational, you know, really, really interesting experiences. And I learned a lot. And, you know, like Wakanda Forever was one of, you know, the best crews I ever worked on. It was really fun. But, you know, I'm like, look, you know, I don't want to be, you know, oh, Kelley Dixon, all she does is action, or those superheroes. You know, that's not what I want. So that's my long answer to your question, and sort of taking into consideration what these guys said too.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense of like it's a little bit of 4D chess, right? We are sort of trying to get wide perspective on everything, think about a career, not find yourself accidentally being the person who only does one thing, because that's not maybe fulfilling. And
unless you want that, you know,
right.
want
But it's
that.
just interesting to think about like you and then like Bradinn, you're kind of going, you're sort of strategically kind of transitioning into other types of work, which is exciting. But that means that you're kind of like, it's not tightrope, but you're kind of like making very clear decisions based on your phase. Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's always kind of dipping into new territory. But, you know, what Kelley said, I had this conversation with Kelley a couple of years ago, and I think about it all the time, actually, about you're going to spend potentially a year, maybe more, maybe a little less of your life working on a project with, you know, with these people, and, you know, what's going to come out of it? Is it something you're going to be proud of? Is it work that you're fulfilled doing in the moment? You know, is that how you want to spend that year of your life that you're not going to get back? And, you know, I think even between the three of us at varying stages of our careers, I think, you know, for me, I would love to be extremely discerning about, you know, each project I jump onto, but, you know, I don't think that I have quite the same luxuries of, you know, picking exactly which one I want and which ones I don't want. Yeah, right. But, you know, but that is part of the math too, though, is it's important to me to pick projects that propel me towards that point. And so, you know, I do my best, and I think I'm doing a good job at not going backwards, even if I'm, you know, launching into something that might be a little more unsure. I think if it's something that I read, if it's a script I read, and if it's people I'm working with, that I say to myself, you know, this has a great potential. This could be something that is not only work I could be proud of, but is also a great launching pad into the next step. You know, that's part of an equation that's constantly running, but I always have Kelley's voice in the back of my head. I don't know that you know that, Kelley, but I always have Kelley's voice in the back of my head saying,
you should
saying work on something you're willing to give that time to. And I think that's such critical advice.
Yeah, I mean, when my friend Jason just cut the Flash, and he said that to me, it really resonated. And I've probably said it to you, Shannon, too. I that's one of those things that there's a little, mentor nugget that I've passed on, because it is true. And it's look, we're all of different ages and different, in experience levels on this continuum, because we're all, I mean, basically we're all competing against each other at this point. None of us is, necessarily, I mean, I've done a little bit more than you, Bradinn, but still, I don't know if they'd hire me over you, or Shannon, you as well. I mean, I think we're all competing.
I know the answer to
that, you guys think never mind. Anyway,
we're going out for different levels.
I think that that we're competing though, and so it's look, sometimes there may be a necessity that you got to work, just like Shannon says. She got a husband and 2 kids. She's got to, you might not be as discerning, but I've watched her career. She was coming up to me, after panel discussions when she was an assistant, and I've watched, her, career, and I think you've chosen incredibly well for what you want. Girl, you're in the academy. I'm not in the academy. I'm listening to that bio that you had, and I'm like, wow, man, I'm not doing enough. But the other thing I was going to say too, along these lines, is only one interview that I had with a director of a pilot several years ago, only one time has the person that I've been meeting with been not on their best behavior. Man, these people, you don't know. I like to say, look, you go on a 1-hour blind date, and then you marry that group or person or group for a year. And then, like my mom would say, sometimes, a lot of times, they'll show their ass to you, right? It's like everybody's on their best behavior. Look, I love Michael Mann's work. It is not a secret that he is difficult to work for, right? But you know what? When I met with him, he was a nice guy. He was really nice, very, he knows how to behave. But then you go in there, and it was a stressful summer. I figured when I did, the luck pilot, it was my second job. Michael Mann really, really liked Vince Gilligan, and he loved Breaking Bad. And he said, hey, he calls Vince, hey, I want resumes from your editors. And I was like, that dude's not going to hire me. And then he calls me on a Saturday at, I was at the drugstore at CVS, on a Saturday at 5:30. Where are you? Michael Mann wants to meet you. I'm like, what? Right. And so I went, and, I met him, and I thought, you know what? This dude, he fires everybody. So I figured I'd go work for him for 2 weeks. He'd fire me, and then I'd go to Hawaii, and then I'd go do the 5th season of Breaking Bad. And, he didn't fire me. I never got fired. I did go through the 5th season, but, I worked for him all summer on this pilot. And it was very stressful, but, dude knows how to behave in public. So again, I've only met one director who was just a jerk in the meeting. And I, immediately called my agent after that. And I said, I don't care if they call, I'm not doing this. But otherwise, you don't know. I mean, you might hear stories. If you're lucky, you may know people who have worked with other, with those people, and be like, oh, I kind of vibe with that guy. Oh, but let me tell you, or something you may hear. But for the most part, people are on their best behavior for that 1 hour, interview that you're going to have.
But then you can call all the people because you know everybody.
Yeah.
You can call people, and when that call when the text message comes in, hey, I see you worked with so and so. Thoughts? And and then
but then
real.
you're banking on people telling you the truth, because a lot of times they don't.
Right.
Well, you ask people you think will tell you the truth.
Exactly, that's true. But then you're like, then you have the whole situation. Well, maybe this time will be different. Maybe it'll be different, right?
Yeah, you really wanted.
All I'm saying is that when you do these meetings, you're going on faith. You're basically going on a 1 hour blind date. And then, it's not like, hey, let's see each other again. No, you are married now. It's a thing, unless you decide to quit or they decide to fire you, you're in it, and so hopefully it goes well, and hopefully you choose well. But, so there's a lot of things to factor. What is the project? Am I going to like it? What does it pay? Is it feasible for my my regular life situation, whether I need to be working at home or whatever, and who are the team, and then when it's out there, is it going to be like something that I don't want to admit that I did, or is it going to be like something that I want to tell everybody about? Hang my poster on the wall.
So I want to switch us towards talking about work, talking about the craft a little bit, and looking at a few clips. We'll have time for just one for each person. Kelley, maybe we'll start with yours, because you submitted one, so it's easy to decide which one we're going to pick from your pile. And it's a Breaking Bad scene.
It's a scene that I even now when I watch it, I'm like, wow, that is so cool. I'm so excited about it. When I watch it, I think it's some really, really good work. I actually cut it with my assistant, Chris McCaleb, who is now an editor in his own right. I remember when we got the scene in, I said, why don't you cut it and I'll cut it, and then we'll watch them together and compare, and then we'll take the best parts from both, right? Another shout out to him though was there were times when there's a lot of things that were done in slow motion, and I was saying to him, I want to use this. It's just dust coming off of the car, but I need it to sound like something. Can you find something? And he did a really, really excellent sound design for it that our sound team basically just kind of, pushed over and did a little bit of enhancing work, but it's really his work.
Hank, why is there what looks like brains in our garbage can?
Hey, baby, I got him. Dead to rights.
You got Walt.
Yeah, I got him in handcuffs as we speak. Want me to wave to him for you? Yeah. Well, he's not feeling too friendly.
Oh my God. You did it. Thank God.
It's gonna be a little rough for the next couple weeks, but they'll get better. Baby, okay?
I'm much better now.
I gotta go. It may be a while before I get home. I love you.
I love you too.
Who the hell is this? Tribal police?
Hank! 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 Drop your weapons! Jack! Don't do it! Jack! Drop your weapons! You're the man, put them down! How do we know you're cops? Show us some ID. Stand straight! Let's see some badges! Jack! Jack, don't do it! Jack! Oh, Jack, it's off! Jack! We'll give ourselves up and show us some badges! Simple as that! How about it? Jack! 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 It's off! Forget it! Jack!
Yeah,
I'm gonna rewatch that whole season now.
I know. Doesn't that just make
No,
time for a rewatch?
I know.
My
that was one
goodness.
of my favorites.
That poor man.
There's
Ran
so
into Walt.
I have a lot of like thoughts and questions around things. I mean, the one thing that really stands out to me in that sequence is like around 125 when we get to Walt's perspective and we kind of jump the line to the other side. And it's like this great choice of doing something that's going to feel kind of like abrupt, be like, oh, that's different. And it's the first time we move from, because there's various scenes within a single scene, right? There's a scene with Hank talking to, I forget the character's name, but his wife's character. And then there's Walt watching the approaching vehicles. Then there's a standoff. So I'm just interested in like your choices, and also really fascinated by the fact that you and your partner kind of edited different versions, and like interested in learning more about how that like did some of those things, those magical moments appear in both and then you compiled, or did those two versions inform how you both want to proceed with a new kind of that sequence?
In answer to your first question, I never really cared much about the line. I still don't, honestly. I feel like they used to say things like, oh, editing is invisible and the best edits are invisible. And I was like, bullshit to all of that, right? That's not really true. And it doesn't mean that like some invisible editing is, yes, you want that, but some you want, to be in your face. And, that scene is very, very, discombobulating to, you don't know what's going to happen. Everything is sitting on a knife's edge, and yeah, you come off of this scene where Hank has been, on a whole season long of trying to get Walt, now that he knows that Walt, is the guy that he's been trying to get for several seasons. And so, I talk a lot lately and in my own personal sort of editing analysis of my own work lately. I always try and look at, where is the audience? The audience is a player in all of this, as well as all the characters. And I have the responsibility, but also the opportunity to manipulate the audience perspective as well. And I don't take that lightly, and I welcome it in a lot of ways. And so in this, a lot of times, you'll get a perspective of what the writer wants in the script. They will put the audience ahead or put the audience behind. In this case, before in the scene, before this comes in, Walt has already made a call to these guys to come out there. And now that Hank's got him, he can't stop them from coming out there. So now he remembers, oh my God, they're here. This could be very bad, and he's, handcuffed in the back of Hank's car. Hank doesn't know these guys. He doesn't know what they're capable of. And Walt is really unable to change anything. He has no power. He's in prison, basically, in the back of this car. And he can't even talk some sense into both sides. He's the one guy that could talk sense. And so as an audience member, yeah, you're ahead of Hank, but you're not ahead of Walt. But you're basically, you don't have any control either. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. And we're like, oh my God, we may be watching Hank get killed right now. That wasn't what we bargained for. That's not in this scenario. A lot of people used to ask me on Breaking Bad, they say, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm like, man, I do not even try to guess, these guys, because they're so good. And whatever I even think they might do, they're going to come up with something way better than I never thought of. So what would be the point? I'm just going to go along for the ride. And I think everybody that worked on that show was like that. We just were like, couldn't wait to see the next outline coming out. And these guys would write outlines like a short story. They'd be about 12 pages long, and they'd read like a short story. And a lot of times, we'd eventually read the script, but that outline was like, oh man, we just wanted to know what was going to happen. So in this case, one of the things that, sort of an editing, like sort of trick, I guess, is if you want to throw, an audience off their equilibrium, jump the line, do something that throws their equilibrium off. And that's one thing that does. The other thing too is that, it jumps the line, but it jumps at a whole 180. So it's not a jarring jump. We go from outside the car to inside the car. So we're going with, seeing Walt's perspective as an audience member to being with Walt's perspective on the inside of the car. So, we go as an audience, it's like, okay, I'm showing what Walt is doing, but now I'm with him. And that's a big, thing with my editing as well. I want to be with characters. It's way more interesting to be with characters as they discover things, as they realize things about themselves, as they see things for the first time, than the objective perspective, which is just watching them walking around doing stuff, which you don't have, any experience with. I was talking to a director yesterday, and I said, nowadays, especially nowadays, in anything that we watch, we're so used to, we've been exposed to so much as a society in general. We've seen everything. Now what everybody wants is experiential. They want to be a part of it. They want to feel it. They want to, be a part of, things. And so I've tried for years. That's kind of been my sort of go-to, is how can I make the audience a part of this action? And so I use the audience as a character as well. The only other thing I was going to say, as far as, it's funny when I watched that scene, look, this was like 2014, I think. I don't remember what parts were his, what parts were mine. I do remember that one of the things that I had talked to him about, and when I saw the footage and I put these two things together, I said, man, this is crazy, but what do you think of this? One of my favorite things is when Hank is going, when they haven't started shooting it, or maybe they just start shooting, and Hank is moving in slow motion, and then he's not, or, and I put those together and I'm like, what do you think? He's like, that's fucking cool. So that was mine. I know a lot of mine were the quiet moments where Gomi is, kind of scrunching up in slow motion, and definitely the dust coming off that car. A lot of things that I like to do as well were go from side shots to front shots on the same person, with the guy that's shooting that big, huge AR, whatever kind of gun it is, going from side, to front, and, when he's shooting and you see the bullets coming off of it and stuff. I know that Chris did a lot more with a lot of the bullets. Like, he would find places where the bullet actually like pierced something and, glass would fly off. I mean, he was, he didn't just do that stuff. He wasn't, he wasn't just doing that. But I do remember that I missed a lot of those, really, really interesting action shots. And he found those, and, so he was really instrumental. And I will say that the part where, God, what's the kid's name? Jesse Plemons. I don't remember his name, but, he's in there, and we had a problem because he never actually fired the gun, and they never even had a shot of him firing the gun. They had a shot of him holding the gun in close up, but because he was such a major character, we felt like it was, we wanted to have him fire the gun. So that is a totally manipulated shot. I think we're running it at half speed or backwards or something to make it look like, and we just put bullets, on it, visual effect bullets on it.
Did they intentionally not have him shoot?
No, I think they just, look at how many shots they got.
They just didn't get it. Oh.
It was director was Michelle McLaren, and she gets more shots than anybody, but she just didn't get that. And so, and I mean, to her credit, she may have said, "Oh, we don't need it," or, but we felt like, we'd really like to have it. And so we kind of monkeyed, a shot of him, and it sort of worked, if you don't look.
I think it works really well. It's weird. It for that character too. It has he's very tranquil. It actually has a different vibe. And it's all manipulated now that we know it, but it actually felt like, oh, he's experiencing this thing differently than everybody, which I feel like, as I remember, kind of matched the character, because I feel like the character was very opaque and like, what's this guy gonna,
And I think a lot of, definitely it's all those things that were leading up to the first shots being fired, where it gets quiet, and then you hear those are definitely me. I'm a big fan of, doing that kind of quiet work and just finding the right breaths and the right speed of them and the right rhythm of them. But yeah, it's like, even now when I watch that scene, I still get excited, because I'm like, wow, that's really, really, I'm just very proud of that work. And it was a lot of fun. And yeah, it was definitely collaborative, but we were taking, slow-mo stuff and fast-mo stuff and mixing it into a sort of a menagerie that worked really, really well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to pass it off to maybe Shannon. It's okay if I pass it off to you next for a clip. Oh, or you can pass
it. I gotta follow.
It to Bradinn.
Kelley Dixon. All right.
Who wants to follow Breaking Bad?
This is from Impeachment, American Crime Story, and it is the scene where Paula is going in for her deposition, and there's been a lot leading up to this because, they are, oh my God, Paula has been convinced to come forward about what President Clinton did to her, and she's gone through a whole makeover and all this stuff, and she's just basically deer in headlights. And then Monica Lewinsky things are coming crashing down for her too. You'll see that, she's realizing that this is serious.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay.
Mrs. Jones, I don't think we've met.
I'm Robert Bennett. I represent William Jefferson Clinton. He's the president of the United States.
I know who he is.
Okay. You've testified that Mr. Clinton exposed his penis to you in a room at the Excelsior Hotel in May 8th, 1991. How long were you in the room before this happened?
Probably 5 minutes, maybe 6.
And after he exposed his penis, did Mr. Clinton require you to do anything against your will?
Well, he asked me to kiss his...
Well, that wasn't my question, Mrs. Jones. Did he require you to do anything against your will?
Well, he tried to kiss me.
Did he force you to kiss him?
No.
Did he force you to kiss his penis?
No, he asked.
Well, did you kiss his penis?
No, I wouldn't.
You filed an affidavit claiming that President Clinton's penis has a distinguishing characteristic. Is that correct?
Yes, it's got sort of a U-turn in it.
You also made a statement that the president's penis is small. Have you ever taken an anatomy course, Mrs. Jones?
No, I haven't.
And your husband, Stephen Jones, was he your first sexual partner?
No.
So I'm left to gather that your ability to tell whether a man's penis is small or large is based on opportunities you've had to view other male penises. Is that correct?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Miss Jones, do you know a man named Dennis Kirkland?
Yeah, I know Dennis. He's from Lone Oak.
Mr. Kirkland has stated under oath that you gave him oral sex and had sex with him at a party in 1987. Is that true? Mrs. Jones, this is a deposition. You're required to answer these questions. Did you provide oral sex and engage in sex with Mr. Kirkland?
No, with Dennis, no, I did not.
Mr. Kirkland also states that on the same night that you provided oral sex to him, he watched as you provided oral sex to 3 other men. Is that correct?
What?
At a party, did you give oral sex to Dennis Kirkland and then again to 3 other men, as Mr. Kirkland has affirmed under oath?
No, why would Dennis say that?
What, the name of the 3 men right here, Miss Jones?
I don't even know what you're talking about. I swear I did not do that. I swear. How are they allowed to say that? That is a lie. You have no idea what all they said. It was horrible. They acted like it was true. Susie, you didn't tell me it was going to be like that. You said it was going to be okay.
I'm sorry, Paula. No, you listen to me. These are ruthless, terrible people, but they are not going to win. They have no idea how hard it's about to get for him. No idea.
Monica Lewinsky, you've been served.
Oh, it means Merry Christmas. Can I take your coat?
Yes, please. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear all sorts of reasons or things you're thinking through with that scene. It's interesting to see it back to back with the scene that Kelley, they're both like standoffs, you know, and they're both massive amounts of people in a room together. And I think it's so challenging to then make, you know, at least when the guns start firing off, it becomes an action sequence. In this case, it's all verbal.
Penis.
And lots of penis. Yeah. You swap out the guns for the penises. It's all that's TV.
And the pen click. That's
the
pen.
Exactly.
Just like I when I cut this scene, the pin click wasn't scripted at all. And, for some reason, the director gave both of these men pins and they were clicking them. And so I was like, oh, I can use that just to be annoying and to like, if you just see a shot like that, it'll throw you off and just kind of puts you in the mind of Paula and how as soon as he says, there's a moment where the music kicks in where he's like, have you had any sexual partners before? Like, obviously, they're about to go in for the kill. But there's a moment a little bit before that where I'm trying to think of what the exact line is, where they're asking, he tried to kiss me, and she's trying to say, I'm innocent. And they're trying to say, no, you're not. Like, you're basically a whore. And there's a moment where your heart breaks, where you're like, she's not ready. She is not ready to be in this room with these men who are the best lawyers in the country, representing the most powerful man in the world. And then the other women in the room who are facilitators for this skewering of this poor woman, and then oh my God, what is her name? The actress. I can't just remember, when she comes outside. She's also a part of this. Like, she's got an agenda. Everybody's got an agenda, and poor Paula is just stuck between all of these really powerful forces. And then Monica Lewinsky is the same way. What Paula is going through is what Monica's about to go through, that, in a couple years. And, there's also comedy in the scene, obviously, when they talk about his penis takes a U-turn, and all of that is in the transcripts of the deposition too, by the way. And then Monica gets she gets served, and she looks up, and the woman who like basically antagonizes her is like looking at her, and she's like, because she's standing up looking for, oh my God, Sarah Paulson. I'm just forgetting everybody's name. Sarah Paulson's character. God, what is her name? I can't even think of it. So she's standing up looking for her because that is the person she has told she had an affair with. So there's just a lot of like interplay, and I chose this scene because what's being said is one thing, and then what's being felt and what's under the words is another. And people's intention with where I love to read a script and then read the subtext in it. And sometimes you say, oh, well, isn't that what that meant? And they're like, no, it's just the words. But, a lot of the time you're like, oh my God, I'm discovering these things about when the director actually directs the scene, and then you see it, and, or Sarah, Linda Tripp. Sarah Paulson plays Linda Tripp, and Sarah Paulson is really, really good at doing different takes of a scene and different performances where you're like, oh, she's lying when she says that line. And then the next time, like, oh, she thinks she's telling the truth when she says that line. Or, like, there's lots of the great actors can really, really do it. And you watch the takes and you just see, oh, every take says something different. And that's what I love about editing, is finding those moments and putting them together and juxtaposing them with other people's great performances.
Mm-hmm. It feels like it's also, obviously there's other creative decisions that are being made after it passes through you, but like the lighting in that scene, the performances that you're talking about, the script, the accuracy of the script actually represent, because it's a historical drama, right? So like all these decisions, great creative decisions have been made, and like harkening back to the beginning of our conversation, it's like you're able to then, add in this missing piece, which is like building the tension within the edit and the structure of the scene. But all of those other pieces continue to resonate through it. And so it's almost satisfying to be on that end of it, right? Because you're watching this moment of things really coming together, and that's very exciting. Yeah.
And then also an idea that you had last throughout the process. Like a lot of times we do things in our editor's cut, and then, you just have to like give them up when other people come with their notes and their ideas and their brand new things. And it's very, very satisfying when something that you came up with while you're in dailies lasts until the end. You're like, oh my God, I did that. That was me. So, and that's like the pin click, and, a lot of that edit didn't change. I think it was cut down because the scene was, fairly long, but it was always long. So I was okay with cutting it down, but the basic structure of it stayed the same.
Thank you so much. We're going to pass it over to Bradinn now to share our final clip. So Bradinn, you want to set us up?
So interestingly enough, and I'm not going to use this clip, but I did bring a horror story clip that was also a standoff, but this time just between two people, one versus one. But I'm instead going to go a completely different direction and use a Black Lady Sketch Show clip that's way entirely in the other direction from drama. So this is from a sketch called Product Purge, which was the first sketch of the first episode in the third season, which was our Emmy nominated episode. And the gist of this sketch is for one day, for I believe it's 12 minutes, women can return any hair product that did not work for them for the entire year. You get 12 minutes to go back to the store and return it and get your money back, which has a deep cultural history. And so it's kind of set up to be like The Purge, where it's just during this time, this is legal, anything can happen in this time. And so there's comedy in it, there's it's a big action set piece, there's just kind of all kinds of elements to it that we really had fun with.
Ladies, we trained for this! Today, we fight back! Today, we take what's ours! Today, we take control! Ish control! I need you to secure your laces and your lace fronts, because it's time to bob and weave!
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system, signaling the annual product purge. Commencing at the siren, any and all hair products purchased in the previous calendar year that did not bring about the desired results can be returned for the next 12 minutes. No receipts, no restrictions. May God be with you.
Here you go.
Oh. All right, well, you still seeing that dude you met at the Keisha Cole concert?
No, girl, we had less chemistry than a college athlete's transcripts. I'd let him go.
Single file ladies, we go through this every single year. I want this line tighter than baby hair on braids. Thank you. Think you'd be used to it by now. Well, what's your attitude?
Who you texting?
You taking selfies?
What?
Oh my God, you got chips in your mouth.
I mean, at least show him a little titty then if you're gonna do it.
You know you're right about that. I didn't even think about this.
Okay. Go, your man can wait.
It seems like we're all a little thirsty here.
Very.
Very much so.
Clearly.
You want me to turn this around? Is that what it is?
Yes, the party is almost over.
Yes. Oh.
Okay, well, your hand is. Oh, it's red light, green light. Okay. Okay, we are adults, ma'am. Thank you. Give me money for
I love it. I'd love to hear. I mean, yeah, all the reasons why you wanted to share it, but also, I mean, it so much of. I'm always reminded of like Key and Peele, who always talked about like playing the game, like mapping to something that we're familiar with. And so, yes, this isn't a drama scene, but it doesn't feel wildly different than some of the dramatic scenes we've watched, because it's utilizing that and then subverting it with comedy. So, but yeah, please tell us all about it.
I think that was the really interesting part about working on this show, not just this particular sketch, but this show in general, is that in Robin Thede's brand of sketch comedy, it's, there are a lot of real world, real media references, and kind of multiple genres that you're working in. So for this particular one, the references that she gave me for this was obviously The Purge, but there was also, and you catch a little bit of it in the beginning, but there's, she wanted to do Braveheart in the beginning, where there's, the leader rallying the troops in order to go storm the store. And it's like every single sketch we did, there's various references that might be, radically different from what the sketch ends up being or what the type of comedy is. But you really end up leaning into your experience with these different genres. So like, for example, right before I did sketch show, I was doing American Horror Story. And it just so happened, a lot of the sketches I did, not this particular one, but a lot of the sketches I did were horror-based sketches that, had these crazy twists and turns that were horror, but at the same time, they needed to be they needed to be funny. They needed to work as horror genre. They needed to remind you of, the things that you take from these genres, but then kind of flip them on their head. And so, with this particular sketch, it was probably one of the bigger action sketches of the season. And so I really leaned into making it, big in every way I could. So the speech, I didn't play the beginning of the speech, but the speech starts off with this kind of Arabic, cue that's, floating around creating tension. And then it morphs into this big superhero cue. And, playing every shot as big as possible, and the sound design I've made as big as possible, and kind of leaning into what you as a viewer would recognize as this tension that builds to a crescendo and then releases, and everybody's running each other over, dying in the streets, and then you suddenly cut to this serene environment, and there's multiple times throughout the sketch where it's big, and then tiny, and I think that really helped with the comedy of it, and that really helps kind of roller coaster the sketch. So it's not one note. You're very much always being propelled to the next place. And I think that that's important in sketch. I think that's important in anything. But I think, I found that that's really important to this show in particular, is the way it moves and the way it stops, and then starts moving again. It's easily, well, I shouldn't say easily. It's one of the most challenging shows I've ever worked on, just because of how many different things you need to do at the same time, how many different genre things you need to do at the same time while being funny, which is hard on its own, while dealing with, improv comedy, which is a completely different type of editing than I've ever done before. And it really works muscles that you don't get to work in a whole lot of other places. And at the same time, it works muscles that I'm very familiar with and that inform the way that you can move through a sketch, because, there were 4 editors on the show. I bet if we all cut this sketch, we would have had 4 radically different types of sketches. And this was my version, but it's, everybody has their own take on comedy. Everybody has their own take on improv. We're all doing our own music for all these. We're all doing our own sound work for all these. And so it's largely dependent on, at least in the editor's cut stage, which, I think Robin really finds important, at least in the editor cut stage, these are your sketches and these are your sensibilities. And so it was a challenge, but I think it's also really rewarding.
Yeah, it's great that she was able to honor that, or give you all that agency to kind of figure that out and explore it and kind of see it. And it's interesting to me that you had previously had done the American Horror Story stuff, because I feel like there's also a comedy and horror kind of genres of effect, right? We don't choose when we laugh, we don't choose when we're scared. They're reactions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you already were kind of tuning that instrument on the horror side, and there's something that I imagine that correlates with working in comedy similarly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been interesting to me if I had been working on something else coming into this show, because I think I would have brought, not necessarily a completely different tool set, but a different, I would have came into it in a different mental space. And I wonder, I don't have the answer to this, but I wonder how it would have informed how I approached various sketches through that season, because this certainly was a result of the things that I was doing prior to arriving on the show.
Yeah, no, it's all additive. And it's interesting when we think about that sequence of work. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to be really respectful of time. So I think I want to transition us to just kind of a final question that I'd love for input from each of you on. Sort of taking from the theme of Kelley's, what do you want to give 1 year of your life to? These words of wisdom. We've gotten a few. Just thinking about the audience, thinking about kind of working and emerging editors in the audience. I'm sure other folks as well. What is something? What is a piece of advice that we haven't maybe mentioned today? It's okay if it's extrapolated from what we've talked about, that you would want to give to those folks as they can continue to pursue this career.
Well, I give the same advice that I'd give everybody I talk to who's especially coming up. And I think it's advice, Shannon and Kelley would both give too. But I think that, one of the most important things you can do coming in is not just to study the craft and not just to watch people's work and watch work that you like and dissect it and to, learn the tools in the craft. That's extremely important. But it's also, talking to people and networking and, involving yourself in things that might be outside of your comfort zone. And I know when I initially got into the industry, I was a fierce introvert, and I'm still very introverted, but
what?
Well, but Kelley, that is my point, is a lot of people who I work with wouldn't necessarily say that about me. And because when it comes to this work, you have to push yourself out of that boundary. And so I think what I see a lot is I think especially in this profession, in this part of the profession, you do tend to get introverted people who like to be in rooms alone and don't necessarily, aren't necessarily outspoken, don't necessarily want to, prod at people or annoy people or, their perception of doing that. And they end up, not talking to the people who can move them into the right places, or to the people who can, help them move forward in their career or just in their mentality. And it's like, this is a networking industry, and I think it's, most of my jobs have come from word of mouth from somebody else. And so if you're not in rooms talking to people and reaching out to not only peers, but also to potential mentors, you might be doing yourself a disservice. And so I think, the gist of what I say to everybody coming up is step out of your comfort zone and talk to people doing what you want to do and get involved with it, because it's going to propel you in ways you could never do sitting in a room by yourself watching YouTube.
I mentioned it before, I think in this business, a lot of times, especially when you're first starting out, you just don't know where to go, what to do, how to start. And I think some people have a tendency, not everybody, but some people have a tendency to just like, if I could just hook up with this one person, then they'll guide me the whole way. And I mean, that's a possibility. It's like highly improbable, but you might get lucky. But I think if you have that expectation, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's almost like wanting somebody to be all things for you, and basically you can just jump in the back of the car and just go along for the ride. And that's really not very likely. The other thing too is the person who you sort of want to be this mentor of yours, it's one thing to, talk to somebody like Shannon did to me, like over a period of a couple of years at different panels, afterwards, and talk about one thing. But, if you go to somebody and say, hey, will you be my mentor? It's sort of like, that's scary, for the person. It's like, I don't know if I want that responsibility. I'm doing this to do, and I've got kids, and but so I think that to put another person in that sort of position is really going to more, I want to say, probably run them away rather than bring them towards you. And Shannon and I were having a discussion. I remember it was, I don't know, maybe, Shannon, how long has it been since you've been on Grownish? Because that's how long it's been.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was a long time ago. But I remember it was after a panel, and it was at Disney Studios, and Shannon and I were talking, and there was this kid lurking, I have people lurk on the outboard. And, I never want to be rude. So I, said, hi, how you doing? What's going on? He's like, yeah, I have a question. Like, how do you get a mentor? And I remember telling him, I said, well, the first thing to do is go to as many of these kinds of things, events that you can, and talk to a lot of people. And I, again, like, I think when I was coming up, I wanted somebody to just be that kind of person, but I also learned very much the hard way over several years that wasn't really very likely. It's very hard for people to want to take on that kind of responsibility. But if you can sort of, get yourself together to ask a person, a few questions or one question, or, and get your mentoring from a lot of different people, then you are gonna you're going to spend more time growing on your own, which is what you need to do anyway. You really need to kind of come into your own. And, it's a really great fantasy to have somebody throw their arm around you and say, come on, kid, I'm going to show you the way. And look, for some people that are lucky, that happens, but it's not it's not likely out there. And so, I told him, I said, I pointed to Shannon, who was sitting right next to me, and I said, Shannon started talking to me at the end of panels when she was an assistant editor, and look, now she's cutting Grownish, right? And I remember that only because I remember being incredibly proud that you had made it to editor. I didn't even, that was like my first time knowing that had happened for you. It's not like Shannon and I will have dinner nowadays and we will get together as colleagues, which I find really, really fun. I hope she does too. I think she should. But yeah, but it's like we didn't do that when, we were in that stage. I was busy, she was busy. We didn't really cross paths that often. So when Bradinn was talking, I kind of made a couple of notes and I said, just to riff on what he was saying, I said, no one is a mind reader. People don't know what you want. So you need to tell people what you want. And, you may end up with people who, look, they resent you because you're too ambitious, or they resent you because you are an extrovert and they're an introvert. There's all kinds of personal psychology that works into this kind of thing. But for the most part, what you need to do is put out there what it is that you want to do. I want to be an editor. I want to be in scripted, series. I want to work on Spider-Man. If you put it out there, then it can become. I have this thing on my phone that I didn't make up, but I heard somebody say, and I put it on my phone. It says, you have to believe something can happen in order for it to happen. And so, you've got to put out there what you want. And, look, don't be pressured. I used to hate that question, especially when I was first coming up. What do you want to do in 5 years? Oh my God, because what it did for me personally was it made me feel like such a failure, A, because I didn't know, and B, because, oh my God, what if I don't get there? Setting goals was really, really hard. And also, I was just overwhelmed with all kinds of other things. Pay my rent. What's the next job? I got to get my brakes fixed, stuff like that. It's like life is hard. So, I mean, if you're one of those people that is, incredibly goal oriented, that's a great thing. But if you're more likely one of the other people that is not, is just kind of out there, I'm just trying to make it. I'm not trying to get that job. I'm trying to get a job. Right. Best thing to do is try not to think of only one person as your end all be all. It's just sort of like, even in dating, it's like, oh man, if you're that desperate, people will run, they don't, nobody wants to be everything. You got to stand on your own 2 feet. The only other thing I was going to say, sort of also with what Bradinn was saying is, and I've told people this is like a tough love kind of lesson, but I find that, the more confident, sort of like high school, the more confident, the more outgoing. You don't have to be like good looking, unlike high school. You don't have to be good looking, but you have to be very confident, because most people aren't confident. And if you are, you'll probably get the job every time. People, especially in meetings, like to get behind people who are confident. If you go into an interview and you convince them, hey, I'm the right person, I love this project, I'm really fun to work with, I'm excited to meet all of you. People are like, yeah, and they, more often than not, whether you are the best person for the job, more often you'll get the job. That's just, I don't know, that's just kind of the way the world works, unfortunately. So I always tell people, look, if you do have a problem, or not, I don't want to say a problem, if you do have an issue with or challenged by being shy or being introverted, see what you can do to get some therapy about it. Because, I'm not saying that, introverts or people who are shy will not get jobs. That's not true. But a lot of times you may have to meet the right group of people to actually get that job. Whereas the more outgoing, the more confident, the more, I guess, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but, gregarious. I don't know. I don't mean that as a negative, but, that is very attractive, and magnetic. And a lot of people want to hire that person. I know Shannon and Bradinn have heard me say this too. My feeling over the years has been like the only responsibility, the only job that you have in a job interview is convince the person who's hiring you that they can hire you and not have to think about your ass ever again. They have to, then they'll be worried. They'll be like, oh my God, I said yes to this person. If they don't deliver, if they don't, make it on time, oh my God, it's my ass. So you want to, in a job interview, convince them, I am your person. I got this. Everything's going to be great. I've done this, this, and this. You and I were getting along great. Whatever you have to do, that's your objective in that job interview, is to convince them that they can hire you and not ever have to think about your ass again. And then when it comes time where you have to perform, they're going to be like, see, I told you, I made the great decision now, and they want to hear as well. That is, I think that's probably the best piece of advice. Although I know that it's hard for people, it's not easy. But I think that looking back on, you just, go in there and be like, I'm your person, right? I'm the person. But you can't be like, stalkerish, and you can't be too over. There's a happy medium there. But I do think that if you are challenged by meeting people and stuff like that, try and see what you can do to work through that. It will help you in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I'm writing notes because you gave me such great advice. I don't know what else is there to be said. I mean, I guess just kind of going off of what Kelley just said, the way that you build confidence, one way that you build confidence is to cut everything. Watch a lot of things, cut everything you can get your hands on that somebody will let you cut. And you start to build a repertoire, I will say, of how to cut things and how to talk to people about whatever you're seeing in the footage. And you're only going to get that with practice. Like, you're not going to come out the gate and be able to like totally figure out how it should be cut together, and talk about that too, because a lot of what we do is not just putting our hands on the keyboard. It is having a conversation about something that's very, very subjective. And, if you are practiced in that, it will start to become easy, and you'll be able to be like, oh yeah, I experienced this before on this short film, and I have an idea because this is the way we fix that. Or we went down this road for a really long time and it ended up not working. But, we can try it here, but let me think of a way to make that work. And then also just be an interesting person, like when you pull in, that you play guitar, or, all of these things that you can do that that fulfill your soul outside of your work. They come into play in the editing room. Like I danced for a lot of years of my life. And so I feel like a rhythm, like I have an instinctual rhythm with the cuts, and And I can, I feel like I watch something, I'm like, ooh, and then I'm like, oh, let me work on that. Let me get the rhythm right of that. And so it's being a full whole person that likes art, likes to skateboard, like whatever it is.
Wait, what?
Not me.
Oh,
don't skateboard.
Oh, serious?
No. Pole dancing, like whatever it is, because you learn, like when you go to these events, you learn a lot about human nature, like what we like. I don't want to say we're all the same in the industry, but the industry is a bubble of people who kind of think alike. And when you get outside of that bubble, you're like, oh, wait a minute. There's so many different types of people in the world. And bringing that into the cutting room is always helpful. It's like, oh, this person had this traumatic experience and they expressed themselves through art. And oh my God, that was just so mind-blowing. I'm always blown, my mind is always blown by people who write music, composers, and people who conduct orchestras, and like what they, out of their brain, what they create. And because it's just so different from what editors do. We pull in a lot of different things and create and mold that all together, but they are literally like making the clay. So it's having those experiences outside of what your work is always helps. And just being able to talk about it. Like when you go to talk to people about whatever, politics, whatever, like you might argue with somebody about something and you're like, okay, how can I use this in the cutting room? We are not going to agree, but I had to figure out how to calm that person down and bring them around to my idea. I can use that. And it's always don't stay in your own little bubble thinking the way you think and never expose yourself to other ideas. That's it.
You know what? That I will say too, that does help. There's so much time a lot of times that you'll spend waiting for other people to show up, whether it be in a job interview or whether it be in a cut that you're supposed to present or something like that. And that does come in really handy because you can strike up a conversation with your producers or whatever, and it doesn't have to, a lot of times I gotta say, these are very political situations, and a lot of times I don't want to talk to you about the cut at all. I don't want to talk about it. But guess what? Oh, I went to see, hey, did you see Star Wars? Or did you see blah, blah, blah? Or, hey, I'm learning something new on the piano. Or, hey, did you get that, that new, Kevin Feige likes Star Wars figures, or something, and to be the one person who can, spearhead those convos, because, sometimes they won't want to talk to you. They're like on their phone or something like that, and so it's like, yeah, what it does though, is it does make you more well-rounded in their eyes. Now they know you in some other sense, and that goes along with what Bradinn is saying, is like, you kind of have to get out of your comfort zone and you have to learn to converse with, with people about different things. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago where we were waiting like 10 minutes for a person to show up. And, I just started saying, I hooked up my outdoor speakers. It took me 2 days, I talked to them about, I was scared to go under the house, but I finally went under the house and I'm army crawling, it was a fun conversation, but it took up the time. And now, a little bit more about me, and they're like, geez, Kelley, how did you learn how to do that? And stuff. So
that's easily one of the biggest skill sets that I had to, and it is a skill set that I had to acquire, because I struggle so much with small talk, but just like you're saying, Kelley, being in those when you're in a meeting, when you're in a room waiting for somebody to come or waiting for something to happen, like, yeah, that is so critical to be able to generate conversation, not just, and it's not just to fill the space, it's to say, hey, this is who I am. I'm also interested in getting to know who you are, like genuinely. But it is at least for me, it was a skill set I had to acquire. I had to move outside of my comfort zone and say, hey, I'm going to put myself, in this position, in this room that normally I'd be over here like, hey,
working.
Right.
No time
right.
to talk.
But it's, it's those types of things that when you're coming in, you might have got away with not doing that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I could guarantee you that I've made I don't know about gotten jobs, but I've certainly gotten consideration and made friends because I was willing to say, I'm gonna jump outside my comfort zone and engage people in conversation in a way I might not necessarily be comfortable doing, but at my core, I do want to know. I am friendly. I do want to talk to you. It's just a matter of jumping out of that. So I think that's such an important piece of it.
Another way to
How
do
they
it
remember
is
you.
to ask, and you ask them questions, like everybody says, how was your weekend? I mean, that's like, oh, it's fine. Or like, did you see that? You're asking questions and a lot of times, like when people relax, when they get in your cutting room and they relax, then you get all the juice, you get all the juice about what's going on with the show and what's going on in Hollywood. And, and they tend to feel like it's a friendly conversation and that's always good because, then every disagreement is not taken personally. It's like, oh, I know you're cool. I know I like you. I already like you. We're disagreeing about this thing. We're going to work through it. Yeah. As opposed to like, I don't know you and you're wrong, So it's
so interesting because like what you're saying is like two sides of the same. It's like, be a full person, allow other people to be full people. If everybody can be kind of three-dimensional in that way, it's like the work can become just work in a healthy way. But then also your initial point, Shannon, was like, if you play guitar, if you danced previously, if you like all these things about you that you might feel like you're trying to push into the closet and be like, I'm an editor now. It's like all of that stuff's actually valuable, both to tell people who you are, that you're a multidimensional person who's lived a real life, but also they kind of like seep into your work and make you unique as an editor, right? Like you were saying about like how the understanding of rhythm from dance influences how you cut. So it's like, just like value the things that sometimes we undervalue about ourselves and know that that's strength for us. Thank you all for sharing so much wisdom and for being such friends with one another, because it's like great for a conversation. I really appreciate all of your time, Kelley, Shannon, and Bradinn. And I want to thank everybody who's watching for joining us at Sight, Sound, and Story. And to end with one more Kelley Dixon quote, I hope everybody stays flexible and stays happy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's Sight, Sound, and Story Live. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors AJA, Ace, Zeiss, Avid, and Filmmaker U, MuShot President Jason Banke, and Director of Education Janet Dalton. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Twitter, all the socials to get updates on all our upcoming events, and let us know if there's something you'd like to see us do down the road. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time at Sight, Sound, and Story Live.
Culture, and creativity. They define our past, our present, and our future. Our most memorable moments are made with you. Your ingenuity informs inspires and unites us. Your work moves us forward, so we work to keep you creating. At Avid, we champion the art of song and the skills of storytelling, driven by imagination, productivity, and reliability. Realizing technology unites individuals and empowers collaboration, fostering community where thousands of creators connect and share, inspiring students, educators, and artists to thrive. The challenges we face, we solve together. Avid has your back, innovating so you can reach new heights. Whether you are one or many, we only have one goal: to maximize your creative process. Every minute, every day, we are powering greater creators.